permanent drought. The head of the AFL-CIO, which has been completely absent on climate change. But at that state level, where they're experiencing it, he said, how do you have a functioning economy when there's no water? Right. So as we say at LNS, Labor Network for Sustainability, my organization, there are no jobs on a dead planet. So that's sort of how I got into climate activism. I just decided it was the biggest issue facing my job, my folks' jobs, and I just had to shift over. I'd done a lot of work on globalization in China, sort of all the Bernie issues in the 90s. I was on the banking committee with him during the peso bailout, the Indonesian bailout, stuff like that. But I shifted. And then when I got deeper into the work, I realized that climate change is way more than an existential threat to the economy. It's this powerful organizing tool that synthesizes and connects issues and has the potential to really build a broad-based movement that we haven't seen in a long, long time. Because no matter who you are, you've got a stake. So take example, out of the labor movement. You join the climate fight because protecting the climate requires a complete reformatting of the economy.
I'm going to plug into my power pack. I apologize, it's shaky.
Energy. We need a new green industrial revolution that's going to create millions of jobs if we're involved in the shaping of what that future looks like. And it's essential that these new jobs are union jobs. And so this is my chance to rebuild the youth labor movement, which has been one of the most depressing areas to work in my life. I've been in it for 20 years, joined my first union when I was 14, and it's not been fun. So if you spend your life fighting corporate power, corporate takeover of democracy, it turns out that 90 global companies are responsible for 2/3 of carbon emissions. These are the same corporations that are polluting our water, paying poverty wages, subverting the political process, cheating on taxes. So whether you want to save our democracy or save the planet, we need to dismantle corporate power. If your focus is fighting for racial and social justice, you join the climate fight because people of color, poor, immigrants, are often hit first and worst by the heat waves, the storms, the floods, because they have the least resources to adapt, to move, the least resources to afford rising food and water costs. And as we saw after Katrina, police brutality will go hand in hand with floods, fires, and hurricanes. If Black Lives Matter, then climate policy matters. So the issue connections go on and on. My wife's a nurse. She's on the front lines as more and more people flood into hospitals with infectious diseases after hurricanes. And for me, almost everything I've been fighting for is involved. It's woven into the effects. As Naomi Klein says for activists, this really changes everything. And climate change represents the end of siloed politics. We've all been organizing in our own lanes, whether it's labor, whether it's gay marriage, whether it's water, no matter what. We've been siloed. But now, because all segments of society will be affected, the poor, the middle class, students, even the rich, which gives us a chance to actually split the rich like we did in the New Deal, right? We don't have to beg people anymore to care about our issues. This is no longer about altruistic organizing, where we say, I'm struggling with payday loans, you've got to care about what I do on principles of justice. We get a percentage of society that way, right? It kind of works. But we've been generally been losing the battle for 30 years. But now, because everyone has a self-interest, what we do is create a broad tent, a broad narrative, and all fight together. And for me, the reason I love CCI is their motto and your work really reflects this vision. And we'll see where things go the next 10 years. Right? As I think Hightower said, you guys are agile and pivot. That's going to be so key as just the political landscape, I think, bounces from side to side. I mean, look at what happened in 2008. The banks failed. This opening is created, and they nationalize the banks. I never even imagined that was possible, right? And with every storm, drought, flood, there's going to be an opening where people are going to be demanding difference. They're going to be demanding something out of their politicians, out of their government. And the alternative to step in and capture that moment. And that's where my hope comes from. It's like Mother Nature has become an organizer. She's joined the battlefield, and this sort of crisis politics is a very different terrain than we've been fighting in for the last 30 years. So CCI's motto, it sums it up: putting people and the planet first. Right? That's the broad tent. Now, despite all these new opportunities, I think much of the environmental movement, and I say this in friendly critique, is really still practicing a pretty narrow form of issue politics, right? And it really fails to capture this new opportunity. And the result continually alienates working and middle-class people from the movement that are just struggling to make ends meet. So, Keystone Pipeline. It was an example of good tactics. They've just done incredible work, but poor strategy. And for those who don't know, you probably all know that the Keystone Pipeline, major pipeline running from the tar sands down through the U.S. to transport some of the dirtiest oil. And if we remove all that oil, the planet's just fried. So, and for me, getting arrested, being involved in these broad coalitions with indigenous folks, with cowboys, with environmentalists have been really creative. It's been one of the great things that I've been able to do. I sort of had the honor to do. But as the campaign progressed, I saw the same dynamic that's just played out again and again. So environmentalists launch a campaign to stop a harmful project like the pipeline. Then the right wing attacks them as job killers, because the project would have created thousands of jobs, right? And this has always been the Achilles heel, right? We fight for water and wildlife, and the right fights for jobs. And this forces working and middle-class people to choose, or feel like they have to choose, between supporting a pipeline and paying the bills. Right? They've got to choose between jobs versus the environment. And the job-killing frame is really potent. It works. During the KXL fight, they did some polls. 59% of voters believe creating new jobs is more important than environmental protection. Labor unions were just batting all of us around. Right? We got kicked out of coalitions. People were threatening to resign from our board, again, because of this job-killing frame. And the media just kept on parroting jobs for survival, jobs for survival. Now, the counterattack by the activists, by all of us, was to produce a study showing the KXL jobs numbers were inflated, that there just weren't going to be that many jobs, and they were going to be part-time. And this is a good argument, but it's half of the argument, and
there would be temporary jobs
of the issue. It doesn't address the problem. It's from a working class perspective, with 700,000 construction workers out of work, even the promise of a few hundred jobs is better than no jobs. And remember, these pipeline jobs, we see them as temporary. They're some of the best jobs in the economy, best paying, good pensions. And everybody says, oh, they're part-time. This is what all my friends are iron workers, pipe fitters. This is what they do, and they like the lifestyle. They work intensely for a while, and then they have time off with their family. This is literally the kind of employment I've spent my life wanting to recreate. And it's not just resonating with a narrow sort of construction worker sector. I'm an oysterman, and I'm in a co-op. And we were at our meeting during the Keystone Pipeline, and we never really talk politics, because I get Tea Party people in, and we all set prices like socialists, but they're still in the Tea Party. That's what I like. But suddenly this debate about KXL popped up. And it was just heartbreaking, because what people were saying was, hey, maybe if KXL passes, gets through, it's going to really jumpstart the economy. Right? And it's such a sad state when a group of oystermen see a destructive project and a handful of jobs for other workers as a glimmer of hope. So this shows the potency of the jobs versus environment frame, and it leaves our opponents being the voice for job creation, kitchen table issues, while our movement seems callous to the everyday issues that folks are facing. So what my organization did, LNS, was come up with an alternative plan. We came up with a concrete alternative jobs plan to employ the construction workers that would have been employed if we win our fight. And our plan showed that we can create far more jobs, far better jobs, by fixing leaking water infrastructure. mapped exactly along the pipeline route. Right? These were the same places, same workers, fixed infrastructure. We could create more than 300,000 total jobs across all sectors, and nearly 5 times more jobs and more long-term jobs than the KXL project. We blow them out of the water when we go look deep into this. So our strategy was to defang the job-killing attack and show the potential pipe fitter that we're sympathetic to workers' issues, that we have a plan, we're serious, and we're going to welcome them into the fold in the KXL fight, and if they come, we're going to create opportunities for them. And so, I don't know a whole bunch about the fight, but I've heard sort of rumors that there's some similar dynamics at work with the Bakken pipeline.
Yeah. Yep.
With union members storming meetings, it got pretty nasty, attacking folks for blocking jobs, and labor, they fight hard, and it can fight nasty and really inappropriately. But part of me finds it's understandable, right? They really have jobs on the line, right? Their job is to represent their members. And we have to realize there's a difference between the workers and the companies they work for. Right? A worker can love their job and hate their boss. And we need to capitalize on that. So there might be a chance here in your fight to use the KXL strategy and a campaign to put these workers back to work and have a discussion with the state about this false choice between jobs versus environment. We can sit and we can solve both. And the beautiful thing, it fits perfectly with your clean water fight. And it's what y'all been working forever. And then the pipeline fight transforms a divisive fight into an opportunity to build new bridges with labor, right? To show that you care about their issues, their jobs, and you're going to fight for them, and everyone, all of us together, are going to figure out how to make a living on a good planet. So finally, food and ag. This is happening fast, I think. We can never tell the time frame, but the speed is stunning, at least for me, is that the next phase of the climate crisis is really going to be, I think, around food and water. The droughts we saw in California shows what's to come. Essentially, agriculture is being forced out of our breadbasket. And it's actually going to move here to the Midwest. It's going to move to the East Coast. It's going to drive up food prices. It's going to create wars between farmers, between consumers. We already saw that happening. And as the tension increases, food is going to move to the center of climate politics in the coming years. Because agriculture produces a quarter of global carbon emissions. And the vast majority of these emissions come from corporate ag with intensive factory farming and monoculture. And so this means, and again, this is where I see opportunity. This is where the hope springs. That the same folks polluting your water, driving family farms out of business, producing low-quality crap food, are the ones spurring drought, driving up food prices, worsening the climate crisis. But the good news is the opportunity is since you're in the belly of the beast of corporate ag, you're positioned to start a food fight all around climate change. And talk about how building a new food system around family farms and climate change sets up an alternative to their model. And I say this because you all know I've been talking to you about this because it's happening in Iowa seriously. I think it just needs to be organized. And maybe it's already happening. This is an outside view. But all around the country, small-scale farmers are reinventing themselves as what I call now climate farmers, right? And using their farms to capture carbon, reduce food miles, farm to restore farmlands in the environment rather than deplete water and other resources. Right? And they're setting out a completely alternative vision for sustainable ag, which can emerge as a new version of the farm movement of the 80s, which is such an inspiration to me. The new farm movement, farms to save and feed the planet, while building a new family farm economy. And these are the farms of the future, the ones that CCI has always been fighting for, but it's an updated version. So I come here to Iowa and I'm just envious that you've always been part of these iconic fights against corporate ag on one side. You know what political power is needed. If there's one thing about my generation and younger in the food world, they don't understand political power. They don't know about the tracker case. They're unwilling to accept that we need to set prices. They want to sort of nibble around the edges and convince chefs to cook good food, and that's not going to do it. We need to fight to the death on this. So you've been fighting corporate ag, but you've been fighting for the iconic all-American family farms on the other, and the opportunity to turn family farmers into a story of victimhood and into the heroes of sustainability.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll give you a look at the people in this room.
So teach me.
He said, teach me.
I can yell.
I can shout it. I like that voice.
That's on. Check that.
Okay. I'd like to hear
You
more
mean
about,
that?
more about the kinds of jobs that, would replace the pipeline jobs. How did you frame that?
Yeah. So it's exactly the same skills. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to actually find jobs for the pipe fitters that would be building the new pipeline. So it's the pipe fitters, laborers come in, there's steel workers roles, then there are the indirect jobs coming, the steel workers would be an indirect job that comes off of that. And that's why we push for not just, so when we talk about green jobs to workers very much, they're like, yeah, great, bring on the green jobs, but I need a job now, right? And actually, I don't believe a lot of the hype. People have been promising us things forever. We've been decimated by globalization. We don't trust your plans anymore. So what we need to do is both set up a structure for green job creation, but come to these workers and say, listen, we can do this now, we can do it fast, and we can guarantee that during this transition, you can still feed your family.
Are you talking like, updating the water and sanitary lines in cities along the pipeline route?
Yeah. It's just our infrastructure's a complete mess. And a lot of the engineering groups, national engineering groups, are just waving their hands, crying for help. So it's not only bridges that are going to collapse, but actually things that are moving natural gas, that are moving water, are sort of failing much faster.
Aging sewers.
Aging sewers, all of it. There's so much work to be done. We just need to start doing it.
Lynn?
Go for it, Lynn.
My question is, I'm really glad I came to this workshop because I am a union member and I want to have a discussion with my union about this.
What union?
Teamsters 345. And so do you have an effort to talk to union, especially like starting here in Iowa with the Balkan pipeline, for the ones who support it, to understand that infrastructure is a better way to go than the dirty, jobs?
Yeah. So, a couple things about that. So we do have a process. We find that we get asked in during campaigns when it's already too late. And we need to build a movement, and a movement takes process, it takes time, it takes relationship building. And so what we do some narrow meetings where we come in, and that's why the jobs plans and things are effective. And if nothing else, you create a jobs plan, you bring it as not a fig leaf, as like a peace offering to unions to start that discussion, saying, listen, we're fighting this, and we care. So it doesn't
actually
completely
meaning
break down the coalition.
olive branch.
But our larger process is we actually come in and we create a round table where we have religious folks, labor folks, environmentalists, community activists come together, and we have it as a space to air disputes, to predict what we're not going to agree on, talk about climate change as an overarching issue that's going to hurt jobs. So think of it as an economic issue. We usually do a report about how climate change is going to be a job killer in the state in order to shift away from the environment and into the economic pieces. We talk about budgets and stuff like that, just like I was talking about. Then we take that and we create, usually with the group, a climate action plan, how to fix this. And what are the jobs that are going to be created? What are the community benefits? what are the effects on racial and social justice, and then take that into the locals to do education, while environmentalists also take it into their groups and community groups in order to bridge and create this common narrative. Because everyone needs to be educated. Everybody's always beating up on the unions and workers for being retrograde Tea Party dummies, and actually it's both sides that really need work. And then finally what we do is we find some legislative effort that we can come together on to fight. But really creating that safe, deliberate space right at the beginning is just the most important. But you've got to do it a year before the fights are going to happen.
What about this upcoming election, though? It sounds like if he convince more unions to talk about infrastructure and jobs, then it could affect the election.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're doing a major national report now. It's a climate jobs report about how to hit emission targets while creating jobs. And then actually, we just finished a draft, and it's going to cost zero money in the economy because our economy is so inefficient. So the hope is actually we can bring that to labor. Labor already has great infrastructure policies and legislative efforts. What they need to understand is they need to join with the climate movement to actually push those. Those have been sitting on Bernie's desk for like 20, 30 years, the labor. So, but to me, infrastructure is the door in to talking to labor and especially green infrastructure. Because those are, the trouble with the solar jobs and stuff, which are great, a lot of them aren't great paying jobs. That's the trouble. Aren't great paying jobs. And all the solar manufacturing, that was the big promise that went overseas, which just validated everybody's concerns. And if there are any experts, economic experts about globalization, it's workers. So we like infrastructure jobs because they're really well paid.
Wayne, you had his hand up here.
A quote in the Human Age, we billions of people don't have to live like parasites in our environment, really hit a chord with me, and that was your quote. I forgot the author's name, but that was the one thing in the book that stands out that I stand.
Yeah. That we don't need to live like parasites? Yeah. I mean, this is our chance to come, this is why, so one of the reasons I love working on the ocean is because I can do the whole ag system differently now. And I can relate to the ocean completely differently. I can make sure leasing rates are low for small farmers. We can protect seeds so Monsanto and others can't steal it. We can pick the species we grow so it restores the ocean rather than depletes it. And this is all about changing our relationship to the oceans, to the earth, and stop being parasites.
Sharon.
Now, how do you address the problem, and maybe I don't understand, with regard to this, for example, the Balkan pipeline? They're big corporate people, they've got big money, they're going to be paying the salaries of the workers.
Mm-hmm.
If we switch it over and convince everybody, oh yeah, we can eliminate those jobs and work on our infrastructure, that money comes from the taxpayer. So how do you address this financial discrepancy and problem?
It's an excellent question, and one we worry about a lot.
And how do you argue against?
Yeah. So for the Keystone Pipeline, if we got rid of 4 corporate loopholes of tax breaks for fossil fuel industry, could pay for the whole thing. Yeah, it took us a while to figure that out, but it was absolutely linchpin because we can. Yeah, that's the trouble with Bernie's plans, right? I love Bernie, which is like he gets attacked. Okay, where's the money come from?
And offshore, where their profits go.
Yep, exactly.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you had your hand up.
Ron.
Ron.
From time to time I read what wealthy elites actually say about our planet and things like that. And Bill Gates has publicly stated that we need to have a population of about 500 million people on the planet. That's a huge reduction from our 7 billion. And he puts a lot of his money into a foundation that helps supposedly people in Africa And he's actually advocated for taking mosquitoes and using them to vaccinate people, so people would be vaccinated by mosquitoes and not even know it. So if he's advocating reducing the population to 500 million, how do we know what kinds of compounds they might be injecting into people through these mosquitoes? And how can we educate the people? on what
Genetically
these people
engineered
actually say?
mosquitoes, that would be.
I think, an old mentor of mine said, none of this is a technological problem. It's all a political problem. We know how to switch to clean energy. We know how to build healthy communities. And we're seeing this in the food sector, in the health sector, all over the place, where the elites are now scared because their kids are going to burn and drown too. Right? We've only had two existential crises. One's nuclear war and one's climate change. So the rich are racing around. They don't know what to do, and they're now thinking technology. So like on the food sector, they want to 3D print food. They want lab meat, they want liquid food. There is billions of dollars going into solving tech.
All genetically
And they're building,
modified crap.
farms that are completely energy, that are completely controlled down to the smallest nutrient. And that is the fight, because from my perspective, what that is that's one corporation, couple guys, and consumers cutting out farmers completely, cutting the soul out of food, once again ripping the culture out of American values out of food. And then we have this other version, which is we can actually we can feed the planet, feed the nation with small-scale, organic, restorative farming. We have the set of solutions, and then they're sitting up with this tech answer. I think we can win that fight as well. So I'd say it fits in with the changing a mosquito's genome in order that they can inoculate people. To regular folks, it just sounds insane and scary, right? Yeah. I think they're going to lose it. They're scared, and I think they're making the wrong. They don't have a political vision of where to go. And sort of like I met with this hedge fund guy one time, and he was so ideologically all over the map. It was fascinating for me. I said, well, what I want to do with ocean farming is I want to have a co-op. I want to build a food hub, so the co-op owns the value chain, right? And we've got forward purchasing where institutions are willing to pay triple the market rate for our farmers' food. And he's like, sounds great. Well, that's like socialism. Right? I mean, it's sensible now, right? But I mean, that's from an ideological perspective, a hedge fund, that's like as far ideologically as you could get. So they're just a mess, and we need to take advantage of that mess.
Oh, I was just gonna say, along the same lines of the elites, Naomi Klein's book, This Changes Everything. It was one of the most fascinating parts where she details all these billionaires, trillionaires, whatever, and they just want to throw money at something and have their name on it.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to deal with people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to me. They want to have all the control, and none of that is working.
Yeah. No, exactly. They are going for really simple fixes, and the complexities of climate change just aren't going to allow those simple fixes. Their model is dead. I have no idea what's next, right? And that's up to us, and it's really scary, and it's really hopeful. But what I know is they're in crisis, and this is our time to move. And this isn't been fighting for 40 years, but this isn't the same 40 years. And the question is, what's different? And I'm not sure what's different, but some things are different, and we need to analyze that as movement people and figure out how to work with this new calculus so this time we win. Because we're exhausted after 34 years, right?
Right. Karen?
Mr. Smith, this has been wonderful. What I wanted to ask is, could you get together with the wives of these union members and these fishermen and these tea parties and tell them about Monsanto's dual enlist and its Roundup Ready Extend that we're using on our land right now, and tell them what diseases and health problems it caused to their kids, and maybe they can change those union members' minds.
Yeah, no, I think So we did some, it's a great suggestion, we did some, I work in Kentucky a fair amount, mainly because there's the Bert Lauderdale, who's head of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, who you all might know, his family comes from Newfoundland, and so it's like we started that relationship, and then I'm used to talking to Hicks. So, and you know, what they've done, amazingly, is to get whole families, the mothers, to actually join KFTC and fight for this for their sons who are in the mines and who can't join, but actually then join when they get thrown out of work. Or don't get thrown out of work, right? So that's exactly the kind of strategy. There are a lot of ways into these problems because, you know, a worker's heart is conflicted, right? We love our community, we love the environment, and we're so proud of feeding and empowering the country and putting food on the table.
Can you speak a little bit about what's in this dual enlist now and then this Roundup Ready extend? What chemicals are in it, and they are being tested and used on the grounds in quite a few Midwestern states right now.
Yeah. So I'm not an expert at that at all. There's probably someone in this room that really does. It's just us. I can tell you what's in the Long Island Sound, but those out here, yeah.
Can you say something about how people can push on the environment in relation to like protecting the honeybees against the chemicals like glyphosate, and not just honeybees but other pollinators, because without the pollinators we will take a big hit to our food supply.
So I mean, you can tell my view is that we don't talk about the honeybees, right? And you don't have to agree with me on it. It's just my experience of talking to my constituencies, and the beautiful thing is we don't have to, right? So some people you talk about honeybees to, they already care about honeybees, and I think you can create a coalition around honeybees and everything that's related to that, right? But what we shouldn't do is try to convince other sectors of society to be environmentalists. We need to go with them with what meet their immediate needs and build this really, so I'm not a foodie. I eat at the gas station most nights. I love McDonald's, right? Always have. One of my great moments in my life, my grandmother, I used to fish up in Alaska for McDonald's. And I'd see her a couple of times a year. We'd sit down for dinner. And we go to McDonald's, sit down for dinner. We both always order fish with sandwiches, which I used to supply. And she'd be like, who knows, maybe it's one of yours. So I love that drive-through, right? But the fact that I'm in the food movement now is a really good sign and I don't fetishize food. But God bless the people that do, right? And so that's kind of what I was saying, like, we want the people that absolutely love honeybees, but we want other sectors in that are there for completely different reasons.
Down in the back? Yes, girl, ma'am. Yes, sorry.
Okay. I was a little confused until you did go a little bit in on it, but overfishing does more damage to climate, and like with the cattle, with big corporation cattle, they use more methane than any industry and they use more water than any consumer combined. What do you completely do to ensure that you're not taking too much from the ocean and you're giving back for sustainable farming versus what are you doing differently?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm just my work's just a little piece of the puzzle, and really kind of experimental way. On the oceans, my journey is of ecological redemption. I pillaged the ocean for years, but I didn't know I was a kid, right? And so I created this version of vertical ocean farming, which has a very small footprint. You grow only restorative species that are zero input. So you only grow shellfish and seaweeds and harvest salt. And you grow an incredible amount of food in these really small plots. And these require no fresh water, no feed, no fertilizer, no land. So it's the most sustainable food on the planet. And and it'll be the cheapest food on the planet, because zero input food is gonna be so cheap, right? So the economics are going this way. You know, I'm trying to make kelp, the seaweed kelp, the new kale. So this is my hustler side. Like, I can sell anything to rich people. Like, that's my. That's a new farmer skill, unfortunately. We demand a lot of farmers these days. And then every species soaks up nitrogen, soaks up carbon, function as artificial reefs. So that's the restorative kind of farming, which it isn't just sustainable. We move beyond that. So we farm to be stewards, to be climate farmers, to actually leave our patch of ocean in a better place now than it was before. And then this gets a little, so this is not quite out there, but experimental to say the least. But so the bridge between land and sea farming is a huge opportunity. I say our thinking about the food system stops at the water's edge too often. There's a long tradition of feeding cattle kelp. In Scotland and Maine, different places. There are all these studies out of Australia that if you feed cattle majority kelp, it changes their stomach, and you get, and this is stunning, 90% reduction in methane. Wow. 90. So this is what I mean. These are the kind of cool things and exciting terrain we're in. That I think we can all be looking for now that we're going to change our thinking, change our frame, and we're being forced to. Right? So, I'm not expecting kelp-raised beef to be in Wegmans anytime soon, but I think it's those types of experimental.
We've got a few minutes left here. Brad Wilson, you want to ask a question?
You get a lot of different kind of questions in a situation like this, some of them on fairly small things and so forth, but you've really given some stuff here on the big macro stuff that is really important. One thing you've emphasized is that the dominant narrative is economic. And so you need to look for ways to win that and not get divided and conquered with this, like, environment and jobs. And we have another one. It's called, people versus profit. Like, we're for people, not for profit kind of thing. And then we're always going to lose on that. And so we're always going to lose on that. I just put a little bit of an alternative to a couple of things you've said, because the voice of farmers, of farm justice, is missing in the movement. We have this 60-year history of knowing how to win on those issues that the food movement doesn't know about, the environmental movement doesn't know about. And so, you mentioned, like, Iowa versus corporate ag. Yeah, that's really a misleading term, because what Iowa is a victim, the biggest victim. The problem is located in the corporations who buy and process from farmers. Okay, it's not Iowa farmers. We're the victims, and so they lowered our price. They took away our livestock. We lost our crop rotations, and that's the problem of climate change. And that's from farmers, as in all the vast farming regions. Now, that is not dealt with in the sustainable agriculture movement. It's not dealt with in the environmental movement. Okay, and they're on the wrong side of the farm bill because they don't know that justice causes this lock of crop rotation. And then so the sustainable agriculture versus corporations isn't really the right way to talk about it, because you have to have both. You have to have both justice and sustainability. You can't just say we're going to make farmers we're going to put increased demands on farmers. Then the other side, the Farm Bureau, they say, well, we're going to have less demands for farmers because farmers are hard up and they need it. Prices are low. And both are wrong. Neither one is supporting a fair price for farmers. It's not a solution that you're ever going to win if you don't also include the justice of a fair price. And
do you have a question, Brad?
Well, I'm just saying, I want you to comment on that. CCI doesn't have this on their list of 12 things. They don't have the list of having the justice part in there. Although they have a history, the history of CCI where I used to work was excellent on this issue. Excellent.
So there's kind of a couple things, great comments and thoughts. There are two different, to my mind, it looks like there are two different discussions for the country. There's the food discussion, which is on the coasts, and then there's the ag discussion that's happening in the center of the country. There's lots of crossover, but generally, and they're very different discussions, and we need to meld those. I did a piece in the New York Times called "Don't Let Your Children Grow Up to Be Farmers," which goes right to the heart of, we got all this great food economy stuff, farmers markets, all this stuff, and no one's making a living, right? We all talk amongst each other, and it's all right. It's beautiful that it happens. first stage. The question is, what's the next stage? Like, we have the opportunity, the food sector, from top to bottom, is the second biggest employer in the United States. If we can figure out how to make this robust, a real engine in the American economy, it can be a model for other sectors. We basically have, the two O's are alternative energy and food, right? But we
Except
need
food isn't big enough. The category food
No, I
is
mean
not
that-
as big as the category farm.
No, so this is what I mean. When I say, like, I'm from the edges and we say food,
Yeah.
because it speaks to the political movement, which is the food movement, and sort of the
Farm and
electoral
food.
elites and stuff like that. So I mean, we have to merge language. Like, you and I come from different geographies, and we need to figure it out differently, because ag discussion doesn't work either, right? They're both, because that's a very old discussion, right? And this one doesn't understand social power and doesn't understand actually how to grow food at any scale, so you have a just economy. So I really agree there. The other thing on the Iowa, I'm sure I said it wrong. What I meant was, Iowa's in the belly of the beast where there is corporate ag and there is really great farming going on. And there's these two models that we put up next to each other. And then there's the voice for sustainability of positive of what are we going to say yes to as a society and what are we going to fight. I mean, to me, everything for me, it's sort of like what I love is we've become, it's a politics of yes. So it's not like just stop this, don't build this. It's stop this, don't build this, and instead build that. And in my life, I've never been able to talk about build that. And we can steal that space from the right, the rich, everyone else, is that we have the answers. The neoliberals don't have the answers, the elites don't have, we actually have the answers of how to make a really robust, beautiful new society and economy.
So folks, we have 10 minutes for a break. I just want to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. Some people were confused about where Alicia Garza is at Black Lives Matter. She had a family emergency, so unfortunately her workshop is not going to be offered today. You do get a same choice as before for your second workshop. That's going to start at 11:25. And so 10 minutes, let's keep it brief, and thank you all for coming.
I will go down for this break, and then I will go select another workshop, so I'll be back in a few minutes.